Vali, the wooing of Rinda. Billing, king of the Ruthens, was sorely dismayed when he heard that a great force was about to invade his kingdom, for he was too old to fight as of yore, and his only child, a daughter named Rinda, although she was of marriageable age, obstinately refused to choose a husband from among her many suitors, and thus give her father the help which he so sadly needed. While Billing was musing discontentedly in his hall, a stranger suddenly entered his palace. Looking up, the king beheld a middle-aged man wrapped in a wide cloak, with a broad-brimmed hat drawn over his forehead to conceal the fact that he had but one eye. The stranger courteously inquired the cause of his evident depression, and as there was that in his bearing that compelled confidence, the king told him everything. And at the end of the relation, he volunteered to command the army of the Ruthens against their foe. His services being joyfully accepted, it was not long ere Odin, for it was he, won a signal victory, and, returning in triumph, he asked permission to woo the king's daughter Rinda for his wife. Despite the suitor's advancing years, Billing hoped that his daughter would lend a favorable ear to a wooer who appeared to be very distinguished, and he immediately signified his consent. So, Odin, still unknown, presented himself before the princess, but she scornfully rejected his proposal and boxed his ears when he attempted to kiss her. Forced to withdraw, Odin nevertheless did not relinquish his purpose to make Rinda his wife, for he knew, thanks to Hrothgar's prophecy, that none but she could bring forth the destined avenger of his murdered son. His next step, therefore, was to assume the form of a smith, in which guise he came back to Billing's hall, and, fashioning costly ornaments of silver and gold, he so artfully multiplied these precious trinkets that the king joyfully acquiesced when he inquired whether he might pay his addresses to the princess. The smith, Rosterus as he announced himself, was, however, as unceremoniously dismissed by Rinda as the successful general had been. But although his ear once again tingled with the force of her blow, he was more determined than ever to make her his wife. The next time Odin presented himself before the capricious damsel, he was disguised as a dashing warrior. For, thought he, a young soldier might perchance touch the maiden's heart. But when he again attempted to kiss her, she pushed him back so suddenly that he stumbled and fell upon one knee. Many a fair maiden, when rightly known, towards men is fickle, that I experienced. When that discreet maiden I strove to win, contumely of every kind, that wily girl heaped upon me, nor of that damsel I gained aught. Seaman's Edda, Thorpe's translation. This third insult so enraged Odin that he drew his magic rune stick out of his breast, pointed it at Rinda, and uttered such a terrible spell that she fell back into the arms of her attendants, rigid and apparently lifeless. When the princess came to life again, her suitor had disappeared, but the king discovered with great dismay that she had entirely lost her senses and was melancholy mad. In vain all the physicians summoned, and all their simples tried. The maiden remained passive and sad, and her distracted father had well nigh abandoned hope, when an old woman, who announced herself as Veka, or Vak, appeared and offered to undertake the cure of the princess. The seeming old woman, who was Odin in disguise, first prescribed a foot bath for the patient, but as this did not appear to have very marked effect, she proposed to try a more drastic treatment. For this, Veka declared that the patient must be entrusted to her exclusive care, securely bound that she could not offer the least resistance. Billing, anxious to save his child, was ready to assent to anything, and, having thus gained full power over Rinda, Odin compelled her to marry him, releasing her from bonds and spell only when she had faithfully promised to be his wife. The birth of Vali. The prophecy of Hrothgar was now fulfilled, for Rinda duly bore a son named Vali, also referred to as Ali, Bos, or Bave, a personification of the lengthening days, who grew with such marvelous rapidity that in the course of a single day he attained his full stature. Without waiting even to wash his face or comb his hair, this young god hastened to Asgard, bow and arrow in hand, to avenge the death of Balder upon his murderer, Hoder, the blind god of darkness. But see, the Avenger Vali come, sprung from the west in Rinda's womb, true son of Odin, one day's birth. He shall not stop nor stay on earth, his locks to comb, his hands to lave, his frame to rest, should rest it crave, until his mission be complete, and Baldur's death find vengeance meet. Valhalla by J.C. Jones. In this myth, Rinda, a personification of the hard frozen rind of the earth, resists the warm wooing of the sun, Odin, who vainly points out that spring is the time for warlike exploits, and offers the adornments of golden summer. She only yields when, after a shower or a foot bath, the thaw sets in. Conquered then by the sun's irresistible might, the earth yields to its embrace, is freed from the spell of ice, which made her hard and cold, and brings forth Vali the nourisher, or Bo the peasant, who emerges from his dark hut when the pleasant days have come. The slaying of Hoder by Vali is therefore emblematical of the breaking forth of new light after wintry darkness. Vali, who ranked as one of the 12 deities occupying seats in the great hall of Glads-heim, shared with his father the dwelling called Valaskjalf, and was destined even before birth to survive the last battle and twilight of the gods, and to reign with Vidar over the regenerated earth. The worship of Vali. Vali is god of eternal light, as Vidar is of imperishable matter, and as beams of light were often called arrows, he is always represented and worshipped as an archer. For that reason, his month in Norwegian calendars is designated by the sign of the bow, and is called lios-beri, the light-bearing. As it falls between the middle of January and February, the early Christians dedicated this month to Saint Valentine, who was also a skillful archer, and was said, like Vali, to be the harbinger of brighter days, the awakener of tender sentiments, and the patron of all lovers. So that was Vali, Chapter 16 of Myths of the Norsemen by Helene A Guerber. I will be working my way through this book section by section, and if there are any other public domain books that you would like for me to read, please leave a comment below. Did you enjoy this video? Then subscribe for more, and be sure to check me out on Facebook and Patreon. Thank you for listening, and have a lovely evening.